Lord, we give you glory and we give you praise for this holy Sabbath day. Let our tongue and let the word come together. Let knowledge, which is too wonderful for me, be set on high. Let all the words that we say ascend upon the heavens, and let your presence be known unto us. Let us take your wonderful wings and spread and fly off to your glory. Lead us with your compassion. Lead us with your righteousness. Let your right hand take hold of me and never let me go.
Yes,
We give you all the glory and all the praise for this wonderful and holy Sabbath day. Amen.
Amen.
Psalm 92.
It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord, and to sing praises unto thy name, O Most High, to shew forth thy loving kindness in the morning, and thy faithfulness every night, upon an instrument of 10 strings, and upon the psaltery, upon the harp with a solemn sound. For thou, Lord, hast made me glad through thy works. I will triumph in the works of thy hands. O Lord, how great are thy works, and thy thoughts are very deep. A brutish man knoweth not, neither doth the fool understand this. When the wicked spring as the grass, and when all the workers of iniquity do flourish, it is that they shall be destroyed forever. But thou, Lord, art most high forevermore. For lo, thy enemies, O Lord, for lo, thy enemies shall perish. All the workers of iniquity shall be scattered. But my horn shalt thou exalt like the horn of a unicorn. I shall be anointed with fresh oil. My eye also shall see my desire on my enemies, and my ears shall hear my desires of the wicked that rise up against me. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be fat and flourishing, to shew that the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him.
It's 23 and 3, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of thy power in all your dwelling.
It's a good thing to give thanks unto a higher. It's a good thing to sing praises unto his name. It's a good thing to give thanks unto a higher. It's a good thing to sing praises unto his name.
Remember the day of rest, the seventh day he blessed. Ezekiel 20:20, they signed to his rest. The seven trumpets, the seven seals, the seven thunders, the seven churches, the seven women in Israel. Taking hold of one man, and that man is Christ. A higher than him, that one that came and saved my life. We are the seven candlesticks, going like steps of seven months. We are the fruits, the harvest from the righteous crops. The arms stretched out wide, the seven angels around our praise. And the blood of Yeshua to the angel of days. Giving a testimony that comes from the Holy Spirit. The Ruach Kadesh, I pray that I hear it. Father Almighty, taking the time out to praise you. I love you, worship you in spirit and truth. I want to keep your Sabbath in all my dwelling. In spirit and truth, on earth and the demons in heaven.
It's a good thing to give thanks unto a higher. It's a good thing to sing praises unto his name. It's a good thing to give thanks unto a higher. It's a good thing to sing praises unto
Shema Yasharala Ahaya.
Ahaya now,
Ahaya Akah. Hero Israel. The Lord our God is one Lord. Shema Yasharala Ahaya. Alahaya now Ahaya Akah. Hero Israel. The Lord our God is one Lord. Shema Yasharala Ahaya. Alahaya now Ahaya Akah. Hero Israel. The Lord our God is one Lord.
So give all glory and praise to Ahaya Shah Ahaya, Yeshua and the Holy Spirit. Peace to all the 12 tribes who are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And shalom to those not of the blood lineage of Israel, but because they keep the law, statutes, and the commandments, they have the surname of Israel.
That's right.
Tonight we're going to continue to talk about character, and we're going to speak on Hannah. Before we get to Hannah, I want everyone to tell me at least two things about the people who we have talked about thus far that you either did not know or you found interesting. We're at week number 6. We've talked 5 individuals.
Who want to go first?
I'm going first.
Okay.
I did not know Samuel had a weakness. That's one that I didn't know. And his weakness was I think it was his children. I think the Samuel was his children.
Not really.
Right, sure.
No, that wasn't a weakness of his. Not his children per se. But he was gone. So
Come on, help him out. What about Samuel?
got your notes, right?
Okay.
Yeah, why?
This time you can't look at your notes.
I'll go. I can say one for.
Well, he's gone.
Oh.
So
Well, he was searching.
Well, his weakness was dealing with his own children.
right, it wasn't his children. It
He was
was
dealing with his own
right.
children. That was it. But I didn't have the only weakness really. Samuel, only weakness he had. Yeah, I did not know Samuel had a weakness.
Yeah. Tahara had a weakness. What? Okay, who wants to go next? No, we didn't talk about turnaround.
One thing that I learned about Samuel, I didn't know that he felt some type of way about being called old. I would have never guessed that. Because in the Bible, old is like having wisdom and stuff. But I know he.
I missed that part. Samuel had a problem being called old.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of, kind of.
Because the people called him old.
Yeah, he didn't like it. Okay.
Okay, I guess I'll go next.
Hey.
I didn't know that Elisha, S-H-A,
Mm-mm.
sent out a search party for Elijah, J-A-H. I didn't even realize that. And I read that story a couple times.
Well, technically, he didn't send out a search party. He just let them go out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else want to share?
Yeah.
Milka,
One thing
she's
I
eating
found
that Bible.
interesting was, I say, with the lesson on Martha, on how even though Martha wasn't wrong in the fact that she wanted everything to be, nice and people to be comfortable at that time, but she was missing out on the most important part, and that was listening to Yeshua and getting the word and getting strengthened up in that. So I found that I never looked at that story in that light.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
With Rebecca, I learned something that I didn't know is that she covered herself with a veil when she saw Isaac and until their wedding night. I didn't know that either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she showed modesty.
Rebecca, they didn't have no wedding night.
or until
She covered herself with the veil when he was coming out to meet them.
there we go.
Oh my goodness. This is interesting. That's how y'all heard it. This is
Bible
interesting.
says in Revelation 20, you're not supposed to add nor take away
I
from the
know.
Lord.
I thought she
Hey, you
covered
need to
herself
monitor
also,
that
but
chat.
I guess
Yeah.
I don't know then, 'cause I thought she covered herself with the veil from.
When she saw him in the field.
Right. When
But
when
remember-
he was
every
coming.
time after she saw him after that, she-
Girl, when she got there, he took her in his mother's tent and took her.
Oh,
They didn't have a wedding thing.
mm.
Well, you come and get together.
Where he
I
take?
said it.
Where did he take her?
Taking her around the room.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I have another one with Barack.
Oh, okay.
That's not his name.
I have two things with him. I didn't realize that they had no type of military training.
Military.
I can't
Y'all
take
don't leave me
this.
alone.
You had no type of military training.
I didn't realize that
We
one.
got some comments on the chat.
And
Okay.
then, as a result of his weakness, I didn't realize that the honor that he was supposed to be given was given to somebody else.
Yeah. Okay.
Simple things,
Right.
incomprehension.
Yeah.
What do we got on the chat?
All right. Shamaria says, I found interesting with Samuel that he was there for Israel and doing everything he could for the people. And the people kind of overlooked it, like they were ungrateful to him. And why it is important to serve for the Lord, and the reason should not be for people, but for the Lord.
Yeah, and Yeshaya had to correct him on that. He said it wasn't against you, Samuel, it was me.
That better not be mine.
Shaka says, I learned that Elisha wasn't recruited by Elijah, but Elijah's presence made him want to follow. And then she said, with Barak, it wasn't his training, but it was his faith that helped him come out on top.
Mm. All right, we're going to talk Hannah.
Is that all?
And there's some LOLs on there. I don't think we need to.
Yeah,
read
we're gonna
them.
need to read the LOLs. Go ahead.
Use tree training.
Um,
Tree training. What is tree training?
I have no idea. What you-
Miller, she was copying.
Oh,
Mil-
all right. We're going to start off 1 Corinthians 10:6. Now, these things were our examples to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. So we're going to be speaking on Hannah. So we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 1 and 1 Samuel chapter 2. We're going to talk Hannah. Now, like I have said before, and I will say it again, it's not that we are trying to expound weaknesses, but what we're doing is that we're looking at people in the Bible, seeing that they had some faults, they had some issues, and then they had some strengths. The best thing to do with these lessons is to take what they have and understand that these were just normal, everyday people who are listed in a book. That's pretty much what it is.
That's right.
Most of the people who we are going to talk about, yes, they have weaknesses. They have strengths. There are a couple, I think there's maybe two, where the Bible really doesn't put a weakness to them. So we're going to do something else with those. But for the most part, when it comes to the scriptures, when it comes to people in the Bible, excuse me, they have weaknesses and strengths, just like we have weaknesses and strengths. And Hannah is not an exception. Now, you've probably read 1st and 2nd Samuel. You're probably wondering, well, where's the weaknesses at? Because it doesn't seem like she was weak. Well, there's a few. All right, so let's talk about her. First of all, her husband, Elkanah, was her husband. He had 2 wives, which, we'll talk about that in a minute. She lived in Ramathaim Zophim, which is in the country of Ephraim. So what was she? She was a mother, she was a wife, and she was the mother of Samuel, who was a prophet. Her husband loved her, even though she had no children and she was barren. So her husband loved her, even though she did not have any children. Right? All right, so let's talk on weaknesses. She wouldn't eat. She had a problem. She was always crying, and she would not eat because of the difficult circumstance that she was in. So we're going to go 1 Samuel chapter 1. We're going to read verse 7. First Samuel chapter 1, verse 7.
First Samuel, chapter 1, verse 7. And as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her, therefore she wept and did not eat.
All right, so we're going to see with Hannah a strength and a weakness all the same, just like Martha, strength and weakness that is the same. So here she wept and did not eat. It hurt Hannah to be down like this for several years. It also seems like with this, the family were together at Passover. When family were together, it made it worse. Peninnah was probably saying some really ugly things to Hannah about being barren. And Hannah was so heartsick about that, about not having children, that she wept and she refused to eat. Also, Peninnah was provoking her because she was barren. So yeah, that would be a weakness. Not eating, because we're going to see something later. Not eating and crying over your circumstances. Not eating and crying over your circumstances is not going to change the circumstance. And in fact, it's only going to make the circumstance worse. By feeling some type of way with negative emotions and not eating. And we know that this is not a good thing because she's going to do something later on in the chapter. Bitterness. That's another weakness that Hannah had. Bitterness. Let's go to verse 10.
The blanket, she too low.
Verse 10. And she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore.
Right, so this is another way of saying that she was brokenhearted. Now we see that it appears that she's kneeling and she's praying to the Lord. And this prayer was coming from her innermost being, but she was bitter, brokenhearted, because of the fact that she wanted children and she did not have children. And Peninnah, she had children. They was married to the same man. So there was bitterness going on inside of her. Another one, she seemed anxious. vexed, and provoked. We're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 16.
Verse 16. Count not thine handmaid for a daughter of Belial, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken hitherto.
All right, so the term daughter of Belial, that means a worthless woman. And we see in, I believe it's Judges 19, where it talks about the men who wanted to have sex with the other men, and they were called the sons of Belial. Yeah, because they wanted to, have intercourse with other men. So the term daughter of Belial, son of Belial means a worthless or a wicked woman or a worthless or wicked man. And we see Hannah associates women who are drunk with someone who is controlled by the devil. And Belial means worthless. So she had some issues going on. And the sons of Belial, or the daughters of Belial, that's also in 1 Kings. It's also in 1 Samuel 21 and Deuteronomy 13. So it talks about idolatry. It talks about rebelliousness. It talks about scoundrels, various acts. It talks about people who are hostile. Okay. So, what are Hannah's strengths? Like I said, if you read 1 Samuel chapter 1, 1 Samuel chapter 2, you probably did not identify those as weaknesses, but they were. And we're going to see something else a little later. Strengths. First of all, she was faithful. So we can go back to 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 7. She was faithful.
First Samuel chapter 1, verse 7. And as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat.
Year by year, she went up to the house of the Lord. That shows that she was faithful, even though she was having situations. She had an issue where she was barren, wanted to have children. She was faithful. She went up to the house of the Lord year after year after year after year after year. Another strength that Hannah had was she was a woman of prayer. So if we go back to 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 10 again. She was a woman of prayer. Even though her soul, she felt bitter, she still was a woman of prayer. Let's read that.
1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 10. And she was in bitterness of soul and prayed unto the Lord and wept sore.
So her prayer was with strong crying and tears, fervent affection. Vehement prayer. So we look at verse 7, we see a weakness. We look at verse 7, we see a strength. We look at verse 10, we see a weakness. And we look at verse 10, we see a strength. So what does that tell, ladies? That tells you that you're not exempt. You're not, superwoman or anything like that. Hannah was operating with strengths. She was operating with weaknesses. Another strength was her faith and humble. Being humble. Let's go 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 18.
1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 18.
Mhm.
And she said, let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad.
All right, faith. After Eli told her that Yeshua was going to answer her prayers, then she started to eat and had a cheerful countenance about herself. Prior to that, she was not eating, and she was weeping, very sore and bitter. Another where it comes where she's humble. She said, "Thine handmaid." That shows that she was humble. When you ladies are praying, it's perfectly fine to call yourself a handmaid. That shows humility. And you probably have prayed and never even spoke like that, saying, you're a handmaid. But Hannah did. And it's okay. It shows humility. So she had faith in the Lord, even though that faith was exacerbated after the fact that Eli told her that everything was going to work out. Her countenance changed and she started to eat. Versus before she said anything to Eli, she was weeping and not eating and not doing anything. So sometimes good news from the Lord it should make a person change their countenance. You get a good message from the Lord, it should have some type of change in you. In other words, Hannah's reply to this, to Eli, asked him to think, what do you think? Think kindly of me. Pray for her. She ate, and her countenance was no more sad. This is a beautiful example of the imposing influence of prayer. Eli prayed for her. Eli prayed with her, or prayed for her. And all of a sudden, she just perked herself up. Hannah cast her burdens upon Yeshua. Prior, she was handling her burdens herself. So she gave it to Yeshua. And then when she gave her burdens to Yeshua, her spirit lifted. Her countenance changed. She ate. But when she was carrying those burdens, she couldn't eat. She was always sad and couldn't eat. So she was carrying those burdens around. And therefore, that was a weakness of Hannah. But once she gave it to the Lord, her burden was lifted. She was smiling, her countenance changed, and she ate. She returned to her family, ate her portion with a cheerful heart. This also started to show confidence. Confidence that her prayer was going to be answered. So she was no longer sitting around moping and wondering, and she started to live again. She was happy. She was going to have a son. Is there something going on over there? I'm hearing talking. So, Hannah, the burden was lifted. And whenever you allow Yeshua to take burdens off of you, you start to feel lighter, you start to feel better. It's a good thing. Another thing with Hannah, even though she was leaving Samuel at the temple, she was rejoicing that she was leaving him in the temple. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 1.
1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 1. And Hannah prayed and said, My heart rejoiceth in the Lord. Mine horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth is enlarged over mine enemies, because I rejoice in thy salvation.
So Hannah owes all her strength, this newfound strength, this newfound success to Yeshua.
That's right.
Yeshua provided for her. So her song, which is verses 1 through 10, praises the Lord, giving her victory with the issues of her life. And the issues of her life was not having a child. Not having a child in those days, women would not feel like women if they did not have children. So because that is unfortunately not unfortunately, that is the standard that women showed themselves as. How many children did I have? And when you were barren, that was a big, big, big issue. Huge issue. But we're going to see something about this later. This song was praise from Hannah. She begins by saying that the wonderful blessings of Yeshua had came upon her. The other women can no longer look at her and think, man, she must be cursed from Yeshua. Because that's how it was viewed. If you were barren, then it was assumed that you were cursed. And now Hannah is no longer barren. Her weeping that she did in verse 7 turned to joy. And that horn shows her strength. And her strength is in the Lord. She speaks of the greatness of Yeshua boldly before her enemies. But before then, she wasn't doing that. She's delivered. And deliverance is very important. She was delivered. Whatever it was that was keeping her barren. And she was delivered. And she changed. And her countenance changed. And she had a new walk. And she spoke a new talk. This is what prayer can do. And remember, all of this happened before she was conceived with Samuel. When Eli spoke to her, that was before Samuel. That was before she was conceived with child.
That's right.
She was still barren when Eli gave her the wonderful news. So, another strength is that she was grateful. She was grateful. And let's see that gratefulness in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 24.
First Samuel chapter 1, verse 24. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her, with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour, and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young.
Not 1 bullock, 3. All she really needed was 1. She really didn't even need 1. 3 bullocks, an ephah of flour, bottle of wine, brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh. She was grateful to Yeshua. At this time, Samuel was probably about 2 or 3 when she presented him to Eli. Now, typically, this would be something that's very difficult for a mother to do, is to part from her 2 or 3-year-old child.
Mm-hmm.
But she made a vow to the Lord. And anytime you make a vow to the Lord, you better keep it. And her husband was in agreement because her husband didn't say anything. So her husband was in agreement with this vow that she made to the Lord. 3 bullocks, an ephah of flour, and wine. That all was offered to Yeshua, all of it. And Samuel was just a little toddler. Just a little toddler when she brought him to the Lord. After he finished weaning, that was it. She had to keep her word.
And it's not like, she was taking him to another woman who was going to take care of him. It said the women in the gate took care of him. So it's not like he was just going to,
Right. Eli oversaw everything.
So she had to trust them with her toddler.
Another strength not Samuel. Another strength of Hannah is that she was industrious. We're going to go 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 19. She was industrious. First Samuel chapter 2, verse 19.
First Samuel chapter 2, verse 19. Moreover, his mother made him a little coat and brought it to him from year to year when she came up with her husband to offer the yearly sacrifice.
Right, little coat, sleeveless garment, kind of like an ephod that's in Exodus 28. His mother loved him, and she would bring him this little coat. She never complained because she gave him to the Lord. This little gesture that she did, even though she gave him to the Lord, she was still involved in his life. She didn't just give him to the Lord and just go off and just forgot about him. This is right here a sign of mother's love. She made him a coat every single year because boys grow. They get bigger. So he needed a larger size coat every single year. She did that for him. Let's go back to 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11. And let's look at some important acts in Hannah's life. First Samuel 1 and 11.
1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but will give unto thine handmaid a man-child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head.
Right, so Hannah made a pledge to give Yeshua her son in return for Yeshua's favor in giving her said son. She was a married woman. The vow, as we know, could have been nullified or disallowed by her husband. And her vow was a very serious one. Extremely serious. Let's go Ecclesiastes 5. Let's go Ecclesiastes 5, chapter 4. No, I'm sorry. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 4.
5.
Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 4.
Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 4.
Mm-hmm.
When thou vowest a vow unto God,
Mm-hmm.
defer not to pay it,
Mm-hmm.
for he hath no pleasure in fools.
Mm-hmm.
Pay that which thou hast vowed.
Mm-hmm. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Read verse 5.
Better is it that thou shouldest not vow
Mm-hmm.
than that thou shouldest vow and not pay.
Yeah, shut your mouth. That's basically what it's saying. Don't sit up there and tell your child you're going to do something and then don't do it. Man, that is a death sentence. That's not good at all. So Hannah knew that. And Hannah was not going to not do what she said. Her pledge was if Yeshua would grant her a son, he would be consecrated as a Nazarite for service his entire life. He would be a Nazarite.
What's the best thing she could have did for him?
And that's what happened. And her husband was in agreement with it. Did not say, nope, you can't do that, wife. He did not say anything at all. Once again, if you look at 1 Samuel 1 and 11, how many times did she call herself handmaid? 3. Handmaid. Thine handmaid. Try that in your prayers, ladies. Thine handmaid. Hannah got an answer. Maybe you're not getting an answer because your prayers are not humble enough. Could be. Vow a vow. And she could not take it back. Thine handmaid. That was submissive. Being submissive to Yeshua. Then she says, remember me. So what she's asking for is special attention. Remember me, O Lord. Remember you to take care of me. And what will happen is that if you do that, he's going to be yours all the days of his life. See, understand something. When it comes to the Nazirite vow, the Nazirite vow was only specified for a specific time period. It wasn't for a lifetime. It was only for a specific time frame where you would operate with the Nazirite vow. Well, I don't believe you. Really? You don't believe me, huh? Let's go to Numbers chapter 30. Numbers chapter 30. And I think the Nazirite vow starts at verse 6.
Numbers chapter 30, verse 6.
Mm-hmm.
And if she had at all an husband when she vowed, or uttered out of her lips wherewith she bound her soul, and her husband heard it.
Oh, that's the vow. I thought that was the Nazirite vow. 6. That's the vow that I didn't want. We really don't need to go over that one again. Numbers chapter 30. Papa Nazirite vow was Numbers 30. No, it's not.
Early in Numbers.
Yeah, it's early in Numbers. But anyway, so what she did is the Nazirite vow would be something that you would do for a period of time. It wasn't for a lifetime that you would do that for. So she said that it would be for a lifetime. No razor shall come upon his head. Then, not number 6, that's where it's at. So she promises that she would never cut his hair and he would be ordained from birth. Let's look at that really quick. Numbers chapter 6. I'm getting there. Yeah, start at verse 1.
Numbers chapter 6, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto the Lord.
Right, so it was for women also.
Yeah, I was just say I never heard that.
Yeah, it's for women also. Let's go.
He shall separate himself from wine and strong drink, and shall drink no vinegar of wine or vinegar of strong drink, neither shall he drink any liquor of grapes, nor eat moist grapes or dry.
Mm-hmm.
All the days of his separation shall he eat nothing that is made of the vine tree, from the kernels even to the husk. Verse 5. All the days of the vow of his separation, there shall no razor come upon his head.
Mm-hmm. See, of his separation. It's not a lifetime. Keep going.
Until the days be fulfilled in the which he separated himself unto the Lord. He shall be holy and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow.
Mm-hmm.
All the days that he separated himself unto the Lord, he shall come at no dead body.
So Yeshua was a Nazarite, right? Right?
Say what?
Yeshua. Was he in?
The Bible doesn't say he was a Nazarite.
You know the reason why I asked? Because when he was on the cross, they gave him vinegar to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why would they do that?
Oh, there's a few reasons why. There was a few reasons why. First of all, one of the reasons was they gave you that to numb the pain.
I mean, vinegar has been used to numb a pain.
Yeah, they gave him that to numb the pain. Yeah, it was just not straight vinegar. But they gave him that to numb the pain because it was mixed. And that's why he refused it. Because he didn't want the pain to be, he didn't want it numb.
Mm.
Keep going.
Until the days be fulfilled in the which he separated himself unto the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
He shall be holy and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow.
Right. So it was a certain time frame that they would do this Nazarite. It wasn't a lifetime, as Hannah had told Yeshua that it would be for Samuel. So another one, Yeshua answered her prayer and gave her a son. So if we go to 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 27. So Yeshua answered her prayer. Which we all know because Samuel came about. But Yeshua answered her prayer. So let's see something about this. 1 Samuel chapter 1, and we're reading verse 27.
1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 27. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition, which I asked of him.
So she now She now had him in her hand, and she's presenting him to Eli. The Lord have given me my petition, which I asked of him. And she desired to have Samuel. She had Samuel. Yeshua granted her the child. And she did not forbid that he would be going with Eli. She obtained from the Lord, so that she was so thankful to bring forth this child to Yeshua. And because of that, Yeshua blessed her. She had 3 more sons and 2 more daughters after that.
Mm.
So, when Yeshua answers prayers, he not just answers your prayer, but he also adds on to. Children are very active tonight. Add on to what your prayer is. That's how Yeshua rose, when he does it in his timing. And see, that was an issue with Hannah, because it wasn't in his timing when she was feeling sad, incontinence, her barrenness. And her thing about her barrenness, it wasn't because of sin. There was no sin that she was barren or disobedient, or she was deficient in any way. Yeshua chose to close her womb. And Yeshua made sure that that barrenness would not be forever. But it's all in his timing. Yeshua used it for a time. And he removed it when it was time to answer her prayer. We have to understand something. Just because your condition or whatever circumstance that you are in lasts for a long time, that doesn't mean that it's permanent. What you're supposed to do is keep praying. What you're supposed to do is keep serving. And Yeshua could remove it. In his time, Yeshua can grant it. In his time. So Hannah shows us that you may want something from the Lord, and it lines up with the Bible, but if it's not in his time, then you are not to get frustrated like Hannah did. You are not to feel some type of way like Hannah did. You're not supposed to do any of that. You're supposed to continue to serve, continue to do what Yeshua wants you to do. And he will answer it. Now, one thing that we do want to point out is that any time that there are 2 wives for 1 husband, that is a recipe for disaster.
That's right.
Every time that we read these scriptures and there's 2 wives for 1 husband, it was a problem. It was bad. So what does that tell us? That tells us that that is not what Yeshua set this whole thing up for. But Hannah cannot, also what this tells us is that what Hannah was doing was letting the sins of someone else bring her down. And that is something that cannot be. You cannot allow for the sins of somebody else's bad behavior to bring you down.
That's right.
That cannot be. You cannot operate like that. If someone has bad behavior, like the other wife had bad behavior, Hannah was feeling bad and wasn't eating and wasn't doing this and wasn't doing that because of the bad behavior of somebody else. Thing with Hannah is that she had her heart set on having a child. And even if you try serving or you try doing something else, it cannot replace that void that you want. Hannah also had a wonderful husband. She forgot about him. He loved her and he gave her honor.
Double portion.
But her heart was so heavy that she couldn't have a child. That she was bitter about that. Sometimes you can have a wonderful husband right there in front of you, and because of whatever circumstance and whatever it is that you're going through, you kind of omit that. Also, with Hannah, don't look at what other people have and start feeling some type of way about it. Because Hannah did not have the full picture. Now, the Bible never
Y'all
really
better take care of that.
on why she was barren. It's not really said on why she was barren. But the thing is that Hannah was looking at other women and saying, why can't I? Why can't I? Why can't I? And that is a recipe for disaster. Thankfully, she listened to Eli. Because if she did not listen to Eli, she would have continued to weep and be bitter and not bring forth Samuel. She would have turned to other things, alcohol, recreation, other substitutes, because Yeshua was not answering her prayer in her time. Hannah knew she had to make this petition before the Lord. She was a servant. She was humbly saying, "You're a handmaid," requesting special favor, remember me. And she was specific with it, grant me a son. And then she said, no razor shall touch his head. And then she caveated with, he shall do this all the rest of his life. That was very key because a Nazirite vow was not for a lifetime. But she said it would be for a lifetime.
And Yeshua heard it.
All right. So prayers don't have to be heard to be answered.
Wait, what?
Hannah's prayer was just between her and Yeshua.
Oh, because she didn't speak out loud.
No, she didn't. It's just between her and Yeshua. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 13.
First Samuel chapter 1, verse 13.
Yep.
Now Hannah, she spake in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken.
Right. After Hannah prayed, poured out her burdens before the Lord, that was it. She was able to eat. No longer no longer a sad face that she had. She was able to eat. She trusted Yeshua. And she trusted Yeshua that he would do his very best. And she no longer carried this sorrow and this burden and this anxiety around. She cast all her desires on the Lord and didn't stop doing her part. So a lot of people, you cast all your burdens on the Lord, then all of a sudden you just stop. You don't continue serving. You don't continue going through. You got to continue to go through. You got to continue to serve the Lord. She wanted a son. So she continued to have relations with her husband. She didn't worry about it. She did what she could. She put the prayer in front of Yeshua and then went and had relations. Let's read that in verse 19.
Verse 19. And they rose up in the morning early and worshiped before the Lord and returned and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her.
So you remember earlier she said, Lord, remember me. Remember your handmaid. Maybe you kind of snuffed and snickered when I said, maybe in your prayers, consider yourself a handmaid. I ain't doing that. You know how Judah operates. I ain't doing that. I ain't nobody's maid.
Oh, I ain't never said that.
Consider yourself a handmaid. Because now Yeshua remembered her prayer. Now was the time. See, Yeshua didn't bless her when she was feeling all sad and had negative thoughts and negative emotions. Yeshua wasn't hearing that. And it wasn't until she changed. She went, she talked to Eli. She changed. All of a sudden, now Yeshua comes and answers her prayers. Isn't that amazing? And I've only been saying that for God knows how many years. Stop the negative behavior. Stop the negative thoughts. Stop the negativity at all costs. Because Yeshua is not listening. Yeshua is not going to intervene with you. Some of you sit there and you pray, and you have negative thoughts. So therefore, your prayers are not going to be answered. So maybe if you changed your disposition and stop with the negativity, stop looking what other people have, because my gosh, you don't want what somebody else has. You definitely don't want what somebody else has.
That's right.
You don't know what kind of crap that they got. When Yeshua got some good crap for you. You just never know. You thinking somebody else got it better when they got it 5 times worse.
That's right.
You just don't do that. Hannah understood that, and Hannah stopped with the negative behavior and the negative mannerisms. And not only did she bring forth Samuel, but she brought forth 5 more after Samuel. Hannah understood Samuel to be a gift from the Lord because the Lord remembered her. The Lord acted on her behalf and answered her prayer, and he did not forget her. They worshiped the Lord before going on their journey home, but as soon as they got home, it was party time in Elkanah's tent. And she conceived.
Nope. You can stop it right now. Stop it. Ain't no party up there.
Yeshua answered her prayer, and she was assured that she would have a man-child. This is all in due time. All in due time. Hannah may have wished for it earlier, but it was Yeshua's timing that's perfect. Let's read verse 20. 1 Samuel 1 and 20.
1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 20. Wherefore it came to pass, when the time was come about after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son and called his name Samuel, saying, because I have asked him of the Lord.
So Hannah was a dedicated mother. She didn't have Samuel for very long. Only about 2, maybe 3 years. But she spent that time diligently training her son. You can see later that Samuel grew up, that he didn't follow the poor example of Eli or Eli's sons. So that shows us that that Hannah had some type of godly influence over Samuel. She just didn't think that giving the firstborn was enough. She brought sacrifices. She was generous. And although she left all the responsibility to Samuel, for Samuel to Eli at the temple, she continually made a robe year after year after year. So those first 2-3 years are very, very crucial. And she raised him as a godly child for those first 3 years. That's why Eli really didn't have a problem with Samuel. And not only that, even after he was at the temple, she still was into his life. She just didn't go away. So she was a very conscientious mother. So Yeshua does not always choose to do this way. But in Hannah's case, he rewarded her because she was willing. And he rewarded her not only with just Samuel, but with 5 other children after that.
Mm-hmm.
It was in his timing. In his timing. So a very short lesson on Hannah. Next week person won't be so short. Those are the 3 women. Who were they? Who were the 3 ladies that we talked about?
Hannah, Rebecca, and Martha.
And you see the 3 differences. What are the 3 differences in these 3 women?
Their strength and weaknesses.
Yeah, everybody has strengths and weaknesses.
That's the difference. They have different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, they all have different strengths and weaknesses. What were they? What were the differences between the women? What were the similarities?
I would say that their differences would be their levels of faith, their different levels of faith for all 3 of them. And the situations they went through. Like how with, I want to say like Hannah had more faith out of the 3 of them. I don't know if you're putting it in this category. I don't know how to explain it. Just say it. Like Hannah had more faith, and then
How did Hannah have more faith than Martha or Rebecca?
because she went to, when she was faced with in her task, she went into prayer.
No, she didn't go into prayer first, though.
Oh. Okay, so
1, 2, 3, go.
I don't know. I can't explain that. I actually can't. I just know that levels of faith was different.
Okay.
I just can't.
Okay, you say so. I beg to differ, but okay.
We got a comment on that.
Well, I mean, with Martha, I mean, when Lazarus was dead, she immediately was like, instead of being grateful that Shai had showed up at all, she was kind of like, well, if you can heal him, but if you had been here before, he wouldn't have died in the first place.
So what did we say when we said, what did we say when she said that?
It was that she had faith that if he had been there, he wouldn't have died.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not because, if you would have been here, then he would have died. He wouldn't have died.
You know what I mean?
I don't know what you mean. I just go back to words that come out your mouth. What's coming on the chat?
Shamaria says Rebecca shows how she did not wait on the Lord. and took things into her own hands with her sons. Martha was concerned about outside things and was not focusing on the most important thing, inside. And Hannah was letting her emotions get in the way and looking at what others had, and it caused her behavior to not be right.
Wow, ain't that ministering to somebody? Right. Because of the fact that I shouldn't have said that out loud, shouldn't. Yes, I should. So, yeah, you see these three different women, right? These three different women, and they all had different issues. The strengths, if you really look at the strengths, they all had pretty much the same type of strength. They all had faith in the Lord. They showed it in different ways, but they had faith in the Lord. They didn't have different levels of faith, but they all had faith in the Lord. We can't levelize faith. But we can say that we all have faith in the Lord. Your faith may not be as high as my faith, but it's still faith.
That's a mustard seed, baby, all day long.
It's still faith. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They did. Now, there are a few other women that we're going to talk about later on. But this was just to get you an understanding that these three women, you may not have known that they had weaknesses, but they do. And you more than likely knew that they have strengths, but what were their strengths? So this should make us understand that, hey, Rebecca was like this. I see myself like that with Rebecca, but look what she turned out to be. Martha. I see myself in Martha. The whole making sure that the house is pristine and rugs at 90-degree angles and all this other stuff that goes on. But in the end, and with Hannah, always looking at somebody else. Look at somebody else. What somebody else doing, what they got, how they got it.
Nature.
And then you stop with the negative thoughts. And all of a sudden, because you stop with the negative thoughts, Yeshua answers your prayer.
And they come quickly and you don't know what to do with them.
Exactly. Right? So, that's going to conclude our lesson for tonight. Join us live stream tomorrow, 2 p.m. 2 p.m. We start live stream. All right. Any questions here on the chat before we close?
So sundown is at 4 something. Shouldn't we start at 1? I thought we started at 1, not 2.
Yeah, we did start at 1.
Yeah, so where you get 2 from?
I don't know.
Because
Because it went an hour. That's why I did 2. But yeah, we
you know
normally
why?
start at 1.
We was having a children's
Yeah, we were having that children thing. We don't
At
have that
what?
children thing no more. All right, so executive decision has been made. 1 p.m. We're going to start live stream. Great. So that means
that way we won't have to go over sundown with the teaching. Because today sundown was at what, 4:52?
yeah, it's going to be the earliest sundown is going to be from now until December. The earliest that I saw was 4:36.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we should start at 1.
And then we'll start at 1. We'll do that. 1 p.m. live stream.
Let's see how that goes.
Right. Well, we're going to
At one point we were starting at 12.
Yeah, we were. But we'll start at 1. That'll be
Because I remember your sundown is about 4:30.
Yeah, it gets 4. It's not going to be 4:30 till about the end of December.
Right.
But at least we're, established because, changing times around here is
Right.
it's like,
So tomorrow we're starting at
1 p.m. live stream. Okay. All right, so if you've enjoyed the lesson, found it educational, like, share, and subscribe. Notification bell will let you know when we go live. When you press the notification bell, that will let you know when we go live. All right, see you later on today. Kwam Yashara.
Kwam Yashua Allah.